Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are Pre-Med CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the Pre-Med CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PreMedCC.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I will be introducing our two PAs today. So Mario Navarro Jr. is a graduate physician assistant in the program at Betty Irene Moore School of Nursing at UC Davis. He completed his undergraduate degree in psychobiology at UCLA in 2018. He is a first-generation Mexican-American and the son of immigrants from the state of Sinaloa and Jalisco. He is passionate about helping underrepresented minority students interested in pursuing the PA profession and looks forward to answering all of your questions. Omar Nunez is a first-generation Mexican-American born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. He received his bachelor's degree from California State University, Northridge, where he also became a published organic chemist. He is currently a third-year PA student at Stanford University. His clinical background comes from emergency medicine, as he was an EMT for over 2 years. He is an NHSC scholar, so he intends to work in the primary care setting, but he also loves the idea of working in the ED. His experiences as a son of an immigrant family drive him to diversify medicine and uplift underserved communities inside and outside of medicine. Lifestyle medicine is an area of interest that he plans on advancing in his practice as a future PA. Welcome.
Thank you. And thanks for having us. How do you pronounce your name? Because I don't want to botch it.
Nishida.
Nishida, nice to meet you. And thank you for having us on behalf of myself and my boy, Omar. We're super, super excited to just be here and be able to offer this. And a special thanks also to Jubin for hosting us as well and for arranging all of this, all the logistics. And so, yeah, Omar, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, that was wonderful. Yeah, just grateful and thankful to be here to be able to speak a little bit and also just to have a platform, this wonderful platform. So, yeah, happy and excited to start.
All right, and then before I share the PowerPoint presentation that we have prepared at any point in time, guys, if you guys have questions, and feel free to drop them in the chat. And Nishida, I don't know how we usually run things, whether you're kind of moderating and saving those questions for the end. Jubin just chimed in. We'll be doing that in the Q&A. So perfect. And that'll be at the end. Today we have about, I want to say like 20-ish slides. So it won't be too long as it goes for us talking, and because we really wanted to just be able to answer your guys' questions. And so we'll dive right in. Let me share our screen. Let's see that. All right. Can we all see that? Omar, you me.
Yeah, that's good to me.
All right. All right. So as Nishida said, my name is Mario Navarro. I am a not a PAC yet. I am not certified yet. As of last Wednesday, I took my licensing exam, the PANCE. And so sometime next week, this Wednesday or Thursday, I should find out if I pass that or not. And then I'll be able to sport the PA-C in my name. And then I have my buddy Omar, who's a current third-year student at Stanford Health. And so before we dive into kind of our story and really like what we did to get to this point, and we wanted to first give you guys a little bit about our cultural background and the diversity that we bring to the PA profession. And then after that, we'll dive into just some of the general FAQs about the PA profession. And so let me see if that advances. We'll go back. So yeah, I guess Omar, I'll let you start with your background. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'll get it started. So it was already briefly mentioned, but yeah, my name is Omar, and I grew up in I'm born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, specifically San Fernando. If some of y'all know where that's from. And you know, my parents immigrated here from Mexico, specifically Zacatecas. My dad came, you know, early in his teens, and pretty much took any job he could take as a teen, you know, whether it was, you know, on the fields or, you know, as a gardener. And my mother, she came in her high school years, where she later eventually finished high school. And yeah, so they are the source of my motivation. So it's really hard to talk about my path or any form of motivation without talking about my family. And a little bit more about my family is a lot of us probably come from huge families who, you know, minorities come from big families, and Mexicans do as well. I come from a pretty huge family, I will say. My dad has 8 siblings, and my mom has 17 siblings. So there's a lot of cousins, a lot of family I don't know, and but that I love. And it's a little also reassuring in some way, and that, like, you know, I am one of the very few, despite being such a huge family, but one of the very few individuals in our family to pursue a master's or bachelor's, let alone a master's. So yeah, that's a little bit about my family, and then I'll pass it over to Mario.
Thanks, Omar. So kind of similar to Omar, I was born and raised in SoCal. Grew up in Los Angeles, and then we moved to the IE, to the Inland Empire. But I am the son of 2 Mexican immigrants. And so, like we met, yeah, like it was mentioned before, my mom's side is from Badiraguato, Sinaloa, and my dad's side is from Guadalajara, Jalisco. And similar to Omar, have huge family, tios and tias that I'm close to, and then tios and tias that I have never met him, but I know that they're out there. And so really the same kind of huge Mexican family runs through on this side. For my dad, on my dad's side, he is a construction operator. And so he's done that for the last 30 years, operates heavy equipment, and is just every day, including even now that I'm living and moved back in with them. He still wakes up 4 a.m. to make that bread and keep that roof over our head. And so it's just something that I really admire. And my mom is a stay-at-home mom. She just tended to the home, and no easy task. And she's raised, I'm the oldest of 4. I have a younger brother who's 23, and then 2 younger sisters, and both that recently graduated high school, and they're kind of showing some interest in the PA profession as well. So hopefully we'll end up with some more PAs in the future. But yeah, that's a little bit about my background. And that being said, we are going to dive into just what the PA profession is, because I know when people think of pre-med CC, they probably just think like that this organization is geared towards medical school and to becoming a physician, a doctor, MD, DO. But we really want to just clear the air and make it clear what the PA profession really is, and what we can do, can't do, and all of those details. And so I'll take this first slide. So what is a PA? So this is the definition from the American Academy of PAs. And so they define our role as licensed clinicians who practice medicine in every specialty and setting. We are trusted, rigorously educated, and trained healthcare professionals. PAs are dedicated to expanding access to care and transforming health and wellness through patient-centered, team-based medical practice. And so really the two things that I really like about this definition is one, that from that final part where it says expanding access to care, really that's what I think the PA profession is all about. And that, and then also just being part of that team-based medical practice. So typically, as we'll talk about and you'll see in a little bit, practices and hospitals that incorporate physician assistants or physician associates in their healthcare system are typically ones that are approaching patient care from the team-based model. What that means is that you don't have just one single provider making the decisions. It's not just the physician, but a whole team of people weighing in and kind of collectively coming together, bringing their minds together and knowledge to do right by the patient. And so that's one of the cool things about essentially hospitals and clinics and places that incorporate PAs. And so now we're going to dive into a little bit of the history. And Omar, I'll let you take this one.
Alrighty. So yeah, so a little brief history. The PA profession was created in 1967, and just a little bit more on that. So this was during the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was ending, and obviously, you know, in times of war, there's a lot more people being injured, and I think the United States really saw there was a really large need for, you know, providers just to be able to attend to, you know, the returning veterans. And at Duke University, actually, it was first started. They first started the PA program, which is basically for the need for something more accelerated, fast, quicking, but trained professionals that have adequate training enough to like treat patients on a variety or a wide scale. And that's how the PA profession was essentially created. And it was actually, I think, started Duke University, and the first graduates were, I think, believe 4 Navy men. So yeah. And there's about, you know, 170,000 PAs in the US, and that number is like expanding and growing really quick by just the number of like PA programs that are started up every year essentially. And PAs have more than 500 million patient care interactions per year. So that basically speaks to the wide spectrum of like what PAs can do and the amount of patients that they see. So, you know, obviously PAs and physicians are trained on the same medical model, and that adds on to why PAs are able to treat patients that have like a pretty large patient load. Now, I mean, obviously, like if there's 168,000 PAs, you know, out in the US, and, you know, they're still seeing 500 million patients, it speaks to like the credibility for PAs to be able to treat that many patients, you know, a year. So that being said, next slide, and I'll turn it over to Mario.
Yeah, and then one thing to highlight about this as well, with our profession being established in 1967, if we compare that to like nurses or physicians, our profession is still relatively not in its infancy, but we're still like the new kid on the block. And so what that really means is that there's still a lot of work to do in terms of like legislation and in terms of just our scope of practice. It's continually, if you were to compare what PAs are doing now versus 15 years ago, our scope of practice and the things that we can do has expanded greatly. And that's a lot of credit to the American Academy of PAs and state chapters like the California Academy of PAs. And these are organizations dedicated to lobbying for us at the state and national level to essentially allow us to do and practice at the top of our training. And the other thing that Omar mentioned, with the profession starting after the Second World, or no, after Vietnam, and really it came from the medics that returned from war and had all of this like training, and, you know, they knew how to stop bleeds and intubate and do all of these things, and they came with these skills coming out of the war, but no real job. And it was Dr. Eugene Stead at Duke who kind of saw this need, established the PA program, the first PA program class, to essentially take these medics, train them up in skills of being able to diagnose and treat illnesses, and then put them out to start seeing patients and help with the physician shortage, and that still continues to this day. So yeah, just one thing to add there.
I can add a little bit more ideas are coming to me. Yeah, so like what Mario was saying, the scope of practice of peace is like continuing to grow, right? Probably more states quicker than others. But COVID, you know, as horrible as COVID was, it exposed the need of more providers and need for providers. And I think it was just all hands on deck, and PAs really stepped up to the plate along with other APPs. But you know, PAs were step up to the plate, and you know, I think it built some credibility because the healthcare system, you know, whether it was doctors or other providers or hospital systems, started to realize the impact that PAs can actually have and how much stress it can take off from, you know, the hospital and the doctor's shoulders. And just to like give a little bit more specifics on like what PAs do, pretty much anything, like, you know, take histories, conduct physical exams, treat and diagnose. That, you know, we develop the treatment plans, counsel on preventive care, prescribe medication. You know, we can order and interpret lab results, assist in surgeries. You know, we can be first assist on surgeries, but we can perform our own procedures. And then you can really think of, we do rounds and you can conduct clinical research. And one thing that I think is a very intriguing aspect of the PA field is that you can move laterally through the PA profession. So you don't have to stick with emergency medicine. If you want to do emergency medicine, you can always, you know, spread out to a different field and do, you know, pathology or, you know, primary care or any form of surgery. So, yeah.
And then speaking of the education, which is our next slide, we are, like our definition said, rigorously educated. And so our training to become a PA, and what I just finished was, if you look in the right bottom corner, I got my master's degree in, at least mine on paper would say Master's of Health Sciences / physician associate physician assistant. But what that really entails is most programs, including my own at UC Davis, was 27 months or 3 academic years. And usually that first year is didactic book work or kind of the medical knowledge that we have to acquire. And so what that looks like is going to class from, you know, 8 to 5 and kind of being in lecture most of the day with some labs and skills sprinkled in. After you complete that first year, then you do about a year and some change, about a year and some change to get your clinical hours. And so that's that number up in the right corner of 2,000 hours, which averages to about a year of doing 40 hours a week of clinical training. And in that time, we're being exposed to quite a variety of medical specialties. We do family medicine, pediatrics, women's health, surgery, internal medicine, emergency medicine. My school had this like selective / elective rotation where I was exposed to medical oncology. And so we really get to see kind of the core of medicine and get a taste of just the different specialties, which is really great. Currently, there are 303 PA programs across the US. And I feel like every year there's more popping up. And so that's a good thing, because again, we need to be training up more providers. And really, if you are interested in, you know, applying to PA school, and one thing that I would highlight is to really just make sure that whatever PA program you're looking into, and that they have a full accreditation from the ARC PA, which is the organization that's in charge of making sure that they create the educational standards for PA programs. And so you just want to make sure that the programs that you're looking into have a good track record with the ARC PA. Yeah, Omar, anything else to add for this one?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Like Mario mentioned, you know, there's about, on average, schools look for 2,000 hours of clinical experience. Just to know, it does vary from school to school, but I do recall when I was applying, if I wanted to meet every standard essentially for any California school, they all required about 2,000 hours or so. So I think that's a very important thing that actually differentiates, you know, medical school versus PA school. Like PA school, they really, really want you to already be working in the hospital system and be assimilated into the hospital system, just because you know, there isn't a residency that you have to go to after. You have to already kind of know what to expect in the hospital and know roles of not only as a PA, but the nurses and doctors and everyone in the hospital. So that's something I'd like to highlight.
Yeah, and we have a slide where we'll detail kind of the ways to meet that unique requirement. But kind of just bouncing off of what Omar said, really PA programs, as you're coming into, before you start your PA program, they're kind of expecting you to be comfortable with walking into a room and being able to make a patient feel comfortable, being able to educate a patient, and just be able to have that communication skill to make someone feel comfortable, which of course comes with time. And like, even I remember as a first year PA student being nervous out of my mind with the patient actors that we had during our training. But there was still some comfort that I had from just the work that I had already done and the experiences that I had or previously had. So yeah. And then next slide for certification and licensing. Go ahead, Omar.
So just spoke about, what it takes to go into school or apply to PA school. Now, what you do after PA school. So first thing is, graduate, and then shortly after, you, for the most part, you want to take the PANCE exam. It's spelled PANCE, not pants like the pants you wear, but that is our board exam. And people typically take it, sometime pretty early on after you graduate, because you want everything just to, be stuck in an old noggin right here. So once you pass the certification exam, which is the PANCE, you're basically good to go and practice for the most part. Now you just got to get hired. Now, once you're a PA, there is 100 hours of continuing medical education. And that's pretty much like standard, basically, just so that, they kind of know you're still on your toes and are doing everything you can to be up to date with medicine. As we know, since medicine evolves, it seems like every screening changes every year. There a lot more data comes out with other research for like various aspects of medicine, and that's also why there's a recertification exam every 10 years. And to some people it might be a bummer, but I think it's like very important, especially because every, like, just from like speaking to the PAs, medicine evolves, so like names of diseases evolve, and like the etiologies and treatments evolve. So I think, like, as if you continue to just be a PA throughout those 10 years, you should be okay. Like, you might passively learn new things, which is important, but that recertification exam is every 10 years, so something to look out for.
And to add, I think it also highlights the fact that whether you're pursuing a profession as a physician or as a PA or as an NP, pursuing this to become a medical provider is making the commitment to be a lifelong learner and to be committed to continually be reading and be learning and growing in skills and in clinical knowledge. And those 100 hours of continuing medical education, what that looks like, it can be reading research articles and taking like quizzes, or like going to like research conferences or things of that nature, where you're being exposed to like lessons. And so just another testament to the commitment of the PA profession to stay at the top of our medical knowledge and expertise. And so where do PAs practice? So like Omar mentioned, and we pretty much can practice in any and every specialty. In terms of the work setting, so whether that's like a clinic, hospital, about 50% of us, 52.5%, that light blue function at an outpatient office or a clinic. And so that includes like a family medicine clinic, a women's health clinic, a pediatrics clinic. And then the other bulk is about 36% of us are in a hospital, and then 6% function in urgent care. And then the 5% is other settings. And so for actual specialties, you'll find the majority of PAs functioning 27% in surgical subspecialties. In the blue, we have primary care, and then in the red, orange, I don't even know what this color is, internal medicine. And so that's usually like a hospitalist functioning inside the hospital and taking care of patients that are in your like ICU or step down floors. Another big chunk of PAs practice in emergency medicine, and so that's one of the I think really interesting specialties. And then what I thought was actually kind of pretty surprising is that only less than 2% of us function in pediatric subspecialties. My final rotation during my PA program was in pediatrics, and I had an amazing time. And I think as a new grad, I'm going to try to look for a pediatrics gig. But yeah, that number was definitely surprising. Go ahead, Omar.
Yeah, so you know, I was pre-med pretty much up until like I graduated from like college, and I always like knew about the PA profession, but I never really looked into it. And the more I looked into it, the more I started to like it. And then this is like one of the main reasons why as well, like another cherry on top. I always knew that the lifestyle balance was a little bit better. Work style balance was better. And I mean, this is like coming from the U.S. News, and you know, it was the PE profession was the number one for best 100 on the job list. So for the best top 4 professions according to U.S. News, number 2 best in healthcare, number 4 in STEM, and obviously this is great, like, you know, amazing, phenomenal. It doesn't mean everything for everyone, but to me, this is like definitely a cherry on top, just because I have always known I wanted to do something a little bit more than just, you know, something outside of medicine, right? Whether it was for income or for uplifting communities, and this just like offers that opportunity to be able to do that just in itself. And I know it's the U.S. News, right? Like it's not everything, but it adds some credibility, right? If people are saying that, you know, they're happy and content with their jobs, then it's something to like, you know, keep in the back of your mind. And for me, certainly did play a role in pursuing the PE profession. I'm pretty sure kind of like for Mario, it might have like, you know, sparked an interest as well. Is that right?
Definitely. I know a few years back we were number 1. We were fortunately knocked down. I have no idea why, and by our NP partners. I think they're number 1 for best healthcare job, and I think number 1 in best STEM. I have my opinions about that. No, I'm joking. But yeah, really, this, how Omar said, it is a cherry on top, but it's just a testament to really the fact that we have a lot of people who obviously take these surveys and are reporting that they are satisfied with their job. They're satisfied with their scope of practice and autonomy, and they're satisfied with the impact that they're having in patients' lives. And so that's something to keep in mind, because if you're at the beginning of considering any career, really, you want to see what the people actually working and that are done with their education, how they feel about their job. And so this is just I think highlights that most PAs are happy and satisfied.
Yeah,
and then
100%.
And I know we just talked about PAs as a career being satisfied, but also patients are satisfied with the care that PAs are giving. And so this infographic here highlights what patients have to say about PAs. And so 91% agree that PAs are part of the solution to the healthcare workforce shortage. 89% voted that we improve health outcomes for patients, and 93% said that PAs add value to healthcare teams. So again, another important element is how patients perceive you as a provider. And so I know sometimes there's, even I had kind of these thoughts on like, well, patients are, if a patient walks into the room, they're going to immediately request the doctor. They don't want to see the assistant because of, our name. But really, as this poll kind of highlights, patients are relatively satisfied with the care that we give and the accessibility that we provide. And sometimes when their physician or specialist is unavailable, we can help bridge that gap and allow them to access the care that they need. And these stats were from 2023 AAPA Harris poll. And so if you have any more questions about that, you can search that up. And then Omar, I'll let you take this one, everyone's favorite topic, cash money.
The moolah part. So yeah, so another appealing aspect of chasing the PA profession is like, the on the median side. And for example, in this case, the 2022 median pay was $126,000 per year. And again, that is a median pay. It varies where you work and what you work in, just like any other like medical profession. So I think 126 is pretty good, right? Because obviously if you work in, bigger cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, the pay is going to be higher. Now the cost of living will be higher as well, but the pay is better, right? And something to keep in mind too is in rural settings, the pay can actually be a lot more significantly higher. So it does depend. And California just happens to be one of the highest paying places for PAs. And I mean, it kind of better be, right, because of the cost of living out here. But for example, you go to Alaska and it's like right there next to California. So it really depends on where you want to go. And, to some people, this pay can be a lot, have more value in areas where, the cost of living isn't so high. So again, this is $126,000. I think it's a good number, but it does vary for the most part. And just to add a little bit about the previous slide, what Mario was saying, about 93% of patients are satisfied. I think that number is continuing to increase in general, because I think the longer I am in the profession, the more patients are starting to be familiarized with what a PA is and what they do. And definitely going to be gaining more credibility, I would say. And I don't know if anyone has got a 93% on an exam, but I would take that, especially in PA school. So just wanted to highlight that. You have anything to say about the money?
No, the only thing that I would add, I mean, the money is nice, but is that physician assistants spend a lot more time with their patients than physicians do. Actually, physicians do a little bit more paperwork than PAs, I think, at times. But that's one of the things. Like, I know some of the PAs that I work with. One of them actually was actually accepted to medical school, but decided to do PA because he wanted to spend more time with patients and less doing paperwork and other insurance things. I mean, as a PA, you get to do that as well. So, but I think a lot of people do that in terms of that want to spend more time with their patients. So that's the only thing that I was just going to add to that.
Yeah, which I
agree.
Yeah, which just to add, like I got to kind of witness that during my surgical rotation, and really the PAs were the ones on the floor and at the bedside, and kind of just making sure that the patient was stable after coming from an operation, and really were the ones that were, of course, the team, the surgeons do come and kind of update family members about how the surgery went, because at the end of the day, they're the ones operating, they're the surgeon, but the minute details and the making sure that the patient is comfortable and checking in on them is what the PAs were doing. And so really it's just how Jubin mentioned, it's a privilege to be able to be involved in and have that I guess privilege to be more one-on-one with patients in that kind of way, and be able to comfort them when needed.
Yeah. And I mean, even if like you are pre-PA and want to do PA, you say, well, I don't want to spend as much time with patients. Like, that's fair. Like, you can do a different specialty that requires less patient time. But
radiology.
For me, radiology, for example, pathology. For me, patient care is very important. I do want to do something like procedures wise. I do want to, have my hands involved, but I think patient care is very important to me. I think that's what kind of gets me going. It reminds me why I pursue medicine, and to me, it's very important. So yeah, so I think. Thanks for bringing that up, Jubin. Back to the money though, Mario, you have anything?
Oh, I was just gonna
anything to say
say,
about that?
126 is the median, and so there's obviously salaries that are lower than this, and salaries that are way higher, upwards of 200K. Actually, my cardiothoracic surgery preceptor, she was bringing in about 300K after overtime. Obviously, she's working probably like I don't even know how many hours. She was just always there at the hospital and was also getting compensated for procedures. But yeah, like the six-figure salary or salaries upwards of 200K do exist. And of course, typically they are associated with higher hours and doing more procedure heavy work. But that's kind of the same thing as our MD-DO partners.
Yeah, that's also national numbers, but California numbers. I could tell you that I've not seen a PA make less than $100 an hour. And I think like average in California is 220,000. So California, you're going to make a lot more money because like, and this is the Bay Area, so I understand that's like not the real world, but I could say that I've not seen too many starving PAs.
Yeah. You're compensated.
So in California, you make a lot, and this is national, so you're comparing with states that you could, buy a mansion with $200,000. So California, I mean, people look at these numbers and they're like, "Oh my God, that's not a lot of money." And it's like, I know nurses that make that much money. Actually, nurses they make more money than that, but that's a whole different story. But anyways, so yeah. But I mean, but the thing is that I would just say is we could sit here till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night talk about money. But I think that if you're happy and you find a job that brings you satisfaction, you're going to be rewarded well. It's not a career that you're going to be starving, and you're going to be fine, and you're always going to have a job, which I think those are the key important things. Because I'm always willing to work for less money if there's no jobs, but if I can't find a job, I can negotiate money. So that's just my thing.
Which is a perfect segue to our next slide about our job outlook and what the future looks like for PAs. And so employment of physician assistants or associates is projected to grow by 27% from 2022 to 2032, which I imagine would be, around the time that if, you're a student that's applying this year or next year, around 2032, or if you're an undergrad, right, and you're trying to complete, the 7 years of education that it takes to become a PA, by 2032, there'd be a 30% increase in jobs, which is important because you want to be able to see and say that like I'm putting, all this effort into something and want to make sure that at the end of this marathon, I am able to find a position and a job. And so there's about 12,000 openings for physician assistants each year on average, and that continues to rise every year. And so this is according to the 2022 Bureau of Labor Statistics report. And so really just there's a lot of positions that are available, and again, a huge need. And so it's a good thing for us.
Yeah, and there's a huge like there's gonna be a huge surge in PAs, but there's a great necessity for just primary care doctors at the moment, primary care providers, and we are basically going to be filling in that gap. And the way I see it too is like PAs do a lot of the same things that doctors can do, especially in some specialties. And having more PAs to fill in that gap is going to provide more efficient, better care, but it's also going to bring down the price of healthcare in general, because a lot of things that a physician is doing, that's getting paid for, a PA can get paid for and do. So there's a lot of value in having PAs and having all PA programs, or increasing PA programs, but there'll be more PAs in the healthcare system. So that's my little tidbit on that.
All right. And so now going back to what it takes to become a PA. And so it's usually you can think about it in two phases. Phase one is earning a bachelor's degree. And I get students who ask me like, what bachelor's degree should I get, or what type of degree should I go for? And it's kind of the same thing that you'll hear for pre-med students. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you complete the required prerequisite courses for the schools that you want to apply to. And so if you're a freshman, a sophomore, a junior in college, and you're thinking about the PA profession, my advice would be start looking at schools PA programs that you're interested in. So like if you're interested in Stanford or UC Davis, go visit our websites. And on those school PA program websites, they outline very clearly the courses that are required. And we'll dive into kind of the typical courses that schools require. But the big thing to remember is that every school is a little bit different. Every school may have their own unique requirement. One school may accept this class, and the school may not. And so really you want to make sure that you're doing your research for each program that you are thinking about applying to. The second, or the other things that I want to highlight, is healthcare and shadowing experience, which is also something that schools like to see. And then graduate entrance exam. The good thing is a lot of schools are moving away from using the GRE, at least on the West Coast. I feel like most California schools don't require it anymore. On the horizon, but it hasn't yet been established, is the PA CAT, which unfortunately that would be our version of the MCAT. And so I think it's currently being rolled out, and some schools are like trying it, but it's not a standard across the board. And so it's optional and depends on the school. The second phase is actually applying to PA programs through the CASPA application portal. And I'll show you guys a screenshot in a little bit of what that website looks like. And getting accepted, and then going to an ARC PA, which is that accreditation committee that I had mentioned before, accredited PA program, and then passing the PANCE, which is our national board exam. And so what are some of the required courses that PA schools will want to see? And so Omar, I'll let you kind of read this slide.
Yeah. So pretty much a lot of the same classes as if you're pre-med or if you're a bio major. So for the most part, required courses are, general chemistry. So 2 semesters with labs, biology, 2 semesters, which is ends up being 8 credits, upper level biology courses, microbiome with lab. And one that differentiates for sure, like medical school from PA schools, is that PA schools require anatomy and physiology with the labs, I believe. And something to note as well is that some programs don't like the combination of anatomy and physio together. At least that was when I was applying. So sometimes some colleges will combine anatomy 1 and anatomy 2 together, and then the next semester anatomy 1 and then physio 1 and then anatomy 2 and physio 2. Some schools have that, just to note, but some programs don't accept that. So you might want to look on some of their websites. Another thing to know is, there are some courses that are non-science, that are aimed for non-science majors, and those might not carry over to the actual prerequisite. So for example, sometimes there might be chemistry class for non-science majors that's essentially the same thing as an actual chemistry class in a science major, like chemistry or biology, for example. Definitely something you would want to look into. Anything to add, Mario?
That just if you do have doubts, really go. I would advise you to go to your local college counselor, whether you're at community college or at a university. And if there's any doubt or they're not aware, the safer bet is to take the same level of difficulty course as the pre-med and nursing students. And then if there's any doubt about a certain program, whether they accept a certain course, a lot of schools will have an outline of the courses that they accept for local schools around them. And if there's ever any doubt, you can always email a school and just ask them, I'm like, hey, I'm taking these courses. Is this something that you accept? And so that's also just some advice to keep in mind as you're planning. But as you continue to see, and one of the things that we're highlighting, you got to make sure you're doing your research about the PA programs that you want to apply to. Start making a list and start like a Google Doc sheet or an Excel sheet where you kind of outline what courses they require and how many units they want. That way you're not caught by surprise at the end of your 4-year degree, your bachelor's degree, and you're like, oh, I still have a requirement or something like that, which happens. And some other courses that again vary between the school, but some schools will want them, others will just like to see them, are organic chemistry and or biochemistry, medical terminology, genetics, immunology, physics, foreign languages. These are things that again will vary between schools. And now one of the things that we had talked about that really differentiates us from our MD-DO students is that to get into a PA program, typically, I don't think I've seen, at least now, a PA program without this requirement. You are required to have direct patient care experience. And so what does that look like? That looks like working as an EMT or a paramedic or a CNA, a certified nursing assistant, or a dietitian, or being an ER technician, or a medical scribe or medical assistant. So kind of these positions where you're already responsible for someone's care, and typically positions where you're essentially these kinds of jobs, the best ones are where you're making medical decisions. So like whether that's you working as a PT aide and you have some say in the type of exercises that you think are best for your patient, or whether you're an EMT and you're in the back of the ambulance and you're transporting a patient and you get to monitor their oxygen saturation and make the call that, you know what, this patient is, their oxygen saturation is dropping, and I need to start some oxygen. Like even those things, those are really good things to have in a patient care job, because they show that you've at least have had some level of responsibility that impacts a patient. And so that's just my kind of little spiel on that. Omar, is there anything else you would add to this one?
Yeah, no, you pretty much summed it up. They do want you to already, like you mentioned, have not only experience but be making calls, and also like clinically reason things out. I personally became an EMT, one, because I was always like intrigued by the profession, but also because I didn't every PA school took EMTs for sure. Like that, I didn't have to worry about like, is this school gonna accept it or not. There are, for the most part, like these here, there are other professions where some schools might or might not take, and if you, for example, are a phlebotomist, and you don't see at the school accept phlebotomy, you should probably reach out to them and maybe explain to them what you did, and vouch for yourself, and vouch and just say that I did provide patient care and I did this and that. It's always, it doesn't hurt to reach out to double check if you don't see that that profession on a school's list.
Yeah. And one of the things with the CASP application, when you're applying to PA schools, you actually outline the job that you did, and you get to explain kind of what your role is. And so PA programs are able to kind of see whether you actually, were seeing patients or not. But one of the questions that I often get is like, oh, what is the easiest thing that I can do, or the quickest job that I can get in healthcare? And that typically, at least from what I've seen, is a medical scribe position. But what I would kind of suggest, and my word of advice or caution would be, really try to find a job where you have a responsibility. And so usually those jobs will require some sort of short-term certification, like a CNA, or going to EMT school for a few months. These types of jobs are going to prepare you much better for that role of educating a patient and talking to a patient and making them feel comfortable. Because I know as a medical scribe, really your job is to scribe and follow a provider around. And yes, you are exposed to patients, but you're not one that's making the patient feel comfortable. You're not the one, in the back of an ambulance with the patient by yourself, hearing them out, listening to their story, and empathizing with them and making them feel seen and heard. And so that's just one thing, don't, if you have the flexibility to do that, and don't go for like the lowest kind of hanging fruit. But of course, if medical scribe is what's available to you, there are schools that accept that. And so I don't want to discount the our scribe counterparts. I have classmates who were scribes at UC Davis, and like Omar said, make sure you check in with the schools to see if they accept the job that you're interested in doing or are currently doing.
Yeah, and there's like also like for medical assistants, some schools will ask, is it back office or front office? Do you have a good way of explaining that one, Mario?
I would just explain it as like essentially what they want. So front office is like when you like think of like going to the DMV, the person that's like checking you in, they get all your information. Not really providing patient care as much as like just the transaction of like billing the patient or checking them in and things like that. Versus back office, you're the one taking the vitals, taking the blood pressure, and seeing the patient and making them feel comfortable before the provider comes in, or being in a position where you check them in and you're getting the vitals and you notice like, hey, something's off here, and you go get the provider, and like having that autonomy, I guess, and responsibility to be able to screen patients and kind of know when something is actually urgent. And so that's one distinction that they will sometimes ask about. And now some other things that schools like to see, these are just application boosts, and this goes throughout the board, whether you're applying to PA school, medical school, or a nursing program. Schools want to see that you're a well-rounded applicant, and so they want to see leadership experiences, research experiences, not required, but they are a nice thing to have. Medical missions trips, athletic experience, being from a military background or having a diverse background, or being fluent in a foreign language. And then just one of the big things is if you are at a community college or at a university like the UCs, and really try to take advantage of the community outreach and volunteering programs that often exist at these institutions. And that is really a really good way to get involved and show to schools that you just don't talk the talk, but you walk the walk, and you've dedicated X amount of hours and time to giving back to your community. And as you probably heard, if you were in high school, colleges always want to see quality over quantity. And so it's not enough to just have like 1 hour and you went to like a medical missions trip, and then another hour where you helped at a health fair. Really, the name of the game is quality, having something that you've been a part of for ideally more than 1 year, 2 or 3 years, and even better if within that organization you take on a leadership role. And so that would be my advice. If you're a freshman in college, really try to get involved with one or two organizations and really try to become a leader in that organization.
The only thing that I would add for the healthcare experience is that healthcare is the most regulated field in the US. And so, going and getting your EMT and having a job, that means that you spend the time, you have some sort of certification, you have autonomy. You've gone through an application process, orientation, and they trust you to be with patients and provide care. So that says a lot than just kind of being loosey-goosey, like, I don't know, like going to a medical fair. I mean, first of all, doing like a couple thousand hours of those will probably, I don't know if anybody could do that much of them, but those types of stuff. And then the other medical mission types of it also is that if you're not good enough to practice medicine in the US or delivering healthcare, then you shouldn't be able to go to some developing country that people are browner than here and then do stuff to them. Because I've heard of people say, oh yeah, I went to this place and I was in the operating room and I was doing this and that. And I'm like, you're not qualified. Like, I probably wouldn't put that on your application. So you got to be able to do things that you're qualified and trained for, and not just like saying, oh, I went down to so-and-so country and I was, doing suturing and stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's not good, So just be really careful to say that. And I think a lot of schools are looking at that as well, saying, wait a minute, you shouldn't be doing that. And so being an EMT requires, again, going to a class and getting certified, nationally certified, and those types of things. And that's what they really look for. And certainly the PA profession, you need to have clinical experience to be in there, because it's the learning curve is much steeper than medicine. And so you have to be able to, to do that. And if you're going to a community college, there's hundreds of all of these programs that are listed. You could get them for literally nothing. And I know some community colleges are even like doing EMTs for free because there's such a huge need for them. So you could technically even go for free and get your EMT and just pay the $50. I think 50 or $75 to take the exam. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Sorry.
Thanks, Jubin. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So as promised, here's kind of just a snapshot of our centralized application. And so that's what CASPA stands for, the Centralized Application Service for PAs. And really what this is, it's kind of nice. You essentially are able to put in all of your like information, everything you've ever done, every volunteer experience, job you've had, letter of rec, it all goes in here. This is like the oven where you put in all of the ingredients that make up your application. And on the other side of that, once you submit and pay, schools are able to just go on here and see your app. And so it's very much something that's has its benefits. Also, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that the more programs you apply to, the more expensive it is. I believe, I don't remember the cost at the top of my head. Omar, do you remember what the first application?
Oh man, the first, it was around 200, 250,
something like that. A few $100 for the first one, and then everyone after that is a bit cheaper, like 50 or
25 or $50. Yeah,
we're probably botching it, and there's probably students on here who are currently applying, and so you can answer that question better than we can.
Yeah, chime in if you guys know.
Yeah, and something also is that there are vouchers out there, I think through CASPA, where I think they're need based, and you can apply to those to essentially get some of that cost waived. And so something to keep in mind to save some dough.
Yes.
All right. And so the cost of PA school. I know we just talked about how much money PAs can make. Omar, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah. So I mean, so all right, so $20,000 to $100,000. I mean, that's kind of somewhere maybe like on a national level. In California, back in my day, 3 years ago, the cheapest California school must have been like $108,000 maybe. And it's probably is going to continue to go up, especially with the more the more of a need PAs are essentially. But the cheapest schools I found as well were like in Texas, and a lot of the schools in Texas were like pretty up there, like high level medical programs, but they were cheaper, right? And although most schools are going to be cheaper in different states, something to keep in mind as well is that there will be out of state it would likely be more expensive for out of state citizen to go there as a program. But yeah, for the most part, just know if you're seeing in California, you're probably going to pay more than $100,000 for a school. And that's not including, rent, books, tuition, rent, books, food, all that other good stuff. Anything to chime in here, Mario?
I would just add that when you're looking for a PA program, don't just take the cost of tuition at face value. Really do your research and try to figure out what the cost of living is for wherever that PA program is located. There are PA programs in New York that are like $30,000, which is really cheap, but the cost of living is like 150% higher than the national average. And so you would still be taking out probably 6 figures in loans each year just to live. So something to keep in mind. And then also the other thing that I would highlight is that more expensive does not equal more better in terms of PA education. I'll say it again, more expensive does not equal more better. If you get into 2 accredited PA programs, and they're both in like the similar area that you want to work in, my advice, go to the cheaper program. Save yourself that money. Yeah,
I agree.
And I think we kind of already highlighted the fact that there's a variety of factors that go into choosing the type of program. There's some programs that are online. I'm not a fan of that. Omar, I don't know where you stand in that, but I just think really the pace at which we're learning medicine. You hear it all the time. You hear it from our med student friends who are it's like drinking water from a fire hydrant. And that's very much how PA programs are. We are learning medicine at a very, very fast pace, and sometimes even faster than our MD students. And so yeah, I think the traditional model of being in person, having faculty, and just being able to fully be immersed in what you're learning is an advantage versus the online. Anything else that you would say?
No, I mean, I think to each their own, right? If you know you thrive, being at home or, learning virtually, then by all means do it. And, if just because, just because we're saying that we prefer doesn't mean that it's like your preference, right? Like, yourself the most. And I would just say just go with your gut feeling if you get accepted to both. But yeah, it's the virtual online programs are starting to gain momentum, so you will see more programs opening, just online programs. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
All right, and then our next slide is actually paying for PA school. And so when you hear these numbers of like programs that are 100,000, I know UC Davis right now, our most recent like tuition is somewhere around 150,000. I like have to drink more water when I say that. One of the things that is out there with programs is the National Health Service Corps. And so this is something that I would for sure write down. This is a federally funded program that essentially pays for PA school. And so both Omar and myself are National Health Service Corps scholarship recipients. And so what that means is that we got our PA tuition and a living stipend during PA school, and that covered all of our tuition. And in exchange, we've committed to work at least I've committed to 2 years of working, of having the privilege to be able to work in a federally qualified health center, and providing the specialties are limited to family medicine, women's health, psychiatry, and pediatrics, I believe. Omar, does that sound correct?
Internal.
Those 5, those are the specialties. But really, it is a bomb deal, guys, when I say this, because if you compare this program exists for both PAs, NPs, MDs, DOs, but really for MD DO partners, physicians, once they end up finishing med school, they go on and do their specialty. They are committed to that specialty and are locked into that specialty even after doing their service requirement, versus as a PA, you go and do your service requirement in family medicine, and then after that you are free to fly and go into emergency medicine, into pediatrics, into cardiothoracic surgery if that's what you want to do, or into dermatology. Really, the flexibility component is something that is something that you definitely want to keep in mind, and was a major factor for me choosing the
100%. I would say definitely don't just brush it off. Like, think about it, let it sit. Don't just brush it off. Even if you want to go into neuro, right? We probably don't think much of money, especially if you've been in college the entire time, right? But, these $100,000 at a fixed or non-fixed rate for a certain amount of years, it's going to pile up. So it's one thing to keep in mind. I don't think cost should be everything, but it definitely should play a role. And as what Mario was saying, we don't have, as a PA, you don't have to stay in primary care. You could hop on somewhere else, right? One thing I will add, I have seen recently, Mario, that some primary care federally qualified health centers actually have urgent care that qualifies for it. Very few, but that's something to add. And then lastly, as a PA, if you're working in primary care, you're seeing everything, right? Like, it's literally cardio, pulm, neuro, urology, everything, right? And I think in those 2-3 years that you'll be doing that, it's going to stick. And I think departments know that. So if they know you did 2-3 years in primary care, which covers everything, internal medicine, that covers everything for the most part, they're going to be more inclined to want to hire you, because you weren't in a subspecialty that, you know, might not ever see cardio or pulmonology. So I had something to add as well.
Yeah, and it's one thing that I've heard across the board from PAs that are already in practice, that really out of the gate as a new grad, doing a specialty like family medicine, where you're exposed to kind of the breadth of medicine, from geriatrics, you know, elderly, to pediatrics and kids. You're able to just kind of absorb and really solidify the education and the stuff that we learned during PA programs. And most PA programs, if you'll see, are primary care focused. I know the UC Davis is, Stanford stresses that. USC, I think they have
USC is like specifically.
And so really, that's one thing that schools are looking for, are students that are interested in doing family medicine, doing primary care in an underserved area. And so that's just one thing to look out for. Also, the minimum requirement for this scholarship is 2 years of service. Regardless if whether you accept 1 year of financial aid or 2 years of scholarship, you are committed to, the minimum is 2 years of service. The other thing to highlight is the National Health Service Corps has 2 programs. Their scholarship program, which is the one that Omar and I are doing, and their loan forgiveness program. Both of these require you to work at a federally qualified health center clinic. And the only difference is the actual scholarship, you see the money up front. You don't take out loans. The government pays for your schooling and you get a living stipend, versus the loan forgiveness. You take out the loans, you take out the debt. And then after you work for an X amount of years in the clinic, they forgive the loans. And so if just something to keep in mind to kind of avoid some confusion. And if you ask me, I think this one's probably the better deal, never to have to see the debt and see that negative balance on Sally Mae or whatever your loan service provider is. So now we're kind of wrapping up to the end. I know it's around 7:10 p.m. I want to make sure we have some time for questions. And so I'm going to give Omar the floor to kind of just dive into his story on why he chose PA and why this profession. And so Omar, I'll let you take this away, and here's some pictures for our enjoyment.
Yeah, so where to begin, right? But I'll try to sum it up, make it a little bit more concise in the sake of time. So, you know, right off the bat, you see me here, my family, baseball was a very big part of my life, and it's not as much as I wish it was right now, but an enormous role in my life. My family, they're the reason for my motivation. And you know, there you see me, I don't know, at the height of COVID right there, and then me presenting, me at Cal State Northridge, and me with my sombrero in at Stanford. But, you know, growing up, you know, I grew up with my mom and dad, who I mentioned were, you know, immigrants to this country. And, you know, at an early age, I started working with my father. And as I mentioned, my father was he did everything, but, you know, for most of his time here, he is and was and still is a gardener and landscaper. And, you know, working with my father, you know, under the hot sun, like really helped me like understand what it felt like to be grateful and to hone in on the experiences that, you know, later will make an impact on my future and help me persevere. You know, I used to work with my father, and, you know, like when I was even growing up as a kid, on Saturdays, just to get out of the house or have an excuse not to clean the entire house with my mom those mornings. But it turned out to be pretty fun. You know, I spent time with my father, and I learned the skills he had and what he brought to the table and what it took to, you know, put bread on the table and food and roof over our heads. And, you know, I remember one day as a child, I told him, like, because I would have so much fun with him. I told him, like, you know, I want to be a landscaper like him just one day, you know. And then, you know, he looked at me with emotion, and, you know, he told me, you know, straight to my face, saying like he worked under the sun so that I wouldn't. And that's something that always stuck with me. And like I remember to this day. And my mother, you know, her endeavors like entailed like resolving our circumstances and conquering uncharted waters for our family, you know, such as like pursuing college. You know, she was, you know, 1 out of 18, and, you know, she's the first person in our entire family ever to graduate from college. And she guided the family through the healthcare system despite there being a language barrier and limited access to resources. So my mom fought for our family on one end, my dad fought for our family on one end, and I, to this day, I don't think I could ever repay my parents, but I sure as heck know that I come pretty close to it. And high school I played baseball and I loved baseball. Baseball was my passion. And come college I decided to decided to drop baseball and pursue college, my education essentially, because I knew that I probably have a better chance, and I was also scared about getting injured. So there was that. But I didn't never truly let go of baseball. Even played some like clubs throughout college and whatnot. But come my freshman year of college, I thought I did pretty well. Was doing okay. Come my third year, when I became a full pre-med, right? I took all my classes and like my first 3 science classes at the same time, and it just kind of really destroyed my GPA. Like, it was one of those things where it was like a fat swing and a miss. The ones like you fall and slip and hit your face. One of those. So my confidence took a very big hit. But I just decided to figure it out, right? Like trial and error, pretty much, keep going at it. And finally I started to get the hang of school, and I started to realize that I could, like, I wasn't the smartest kid on the block, but I could outwork people. I started to realize that, and once I realized that, I was able to use that to my advantage. And little by little, started getting my grades up. Still pre-med, everything. But I started to get exposed to the medicine field, right? The more I started to shadow individuals, whether they were doctors or PAs, the more I started to realize, like, differentiate what they do and what they bring to the table. The very big thing that really led me to being PA was like the amount of time I knew I would have with my family. So, for example, there was a situation where one of my uncles passed away unexpectedly, and I really wanted to go to his funeral because I loved him, but I didn't allow myself to go to the funeral because I had 3 exams that week, and I worked multiple jobs, and it was that very second where I questioned medicine, and I started to actually look more into the PA world. And what I found was that my goals and passions were aligned with the PA field, and I still will be able to do everything I wanted to, whether it be patient care, perform procedures, assistant surgeries. And that's when I decided to become an EMT, and I became an EMT right away. And in the EMT world, I started to really see the undermining effects of underserved populations in medicine. And I started to realize how big of an impact I could make just as an EMT. And, I would do my very best. But, with the scope of practice that I had as an EMT, I knew it wasn't enough. And that was very reassuring. And it became more reassuring when I shadowed a PA and I saw their scope of practice. And, little by little, I started to realize that, with the knowledge, the scope of practice, and the platform of a PA, that I'll be able to make an impact as a provider, as a person in medicine and even beyond medicine, to be honest. Now looking back to this day, I don't regret anything. I know I was a PA. I was pre-med for a while. And that led me to the path of becoming a PA and being in PA school. And it's been a very reassuring ride. Not an easy one, but a very rewarding one. And then I'll turn it over to you, Mario.
All right, man. All right, my turn. And so, kind of to answer this question, I guess I'll start with just coming out of high school. I was very fortunate to be the first in my family and extended family to be accepted to college and be accepted to UCLA, which was a big deal. And I remember showing up, to my first class and thinking, because I graduated from high school at the top of my class, I was like, all right, I got this. We're just going to keep doing what we did. And kind of like how Omar shared, it was a rude awakening. The first exam grade that I got back. And unfortunately, at least for myself and my academic kind of undergraduate record, I really struggled for probably the first 2.5 going into my junior year of college. Showing up to UCLA, similar to Omar, was a pre-med and was kind of gun-ho. I'm going to become a physician. And so that's what I was trying to do. And really during that time, I was taking all of the pre-med courses and getting C's and F's. And if you're interested in seeing my complete PA school application, and one of the things that I'll talk about a little bit is my YouTube channel. And there's a video there where I dive into exactly the grades that I got. But if you watch that video, you'll see that I got an F here, multiple C's there. And really for, unfortunately, the majority of my academic career at UCLA, I struggled academically. I think one of the, I guess, not regrets, because everything happens for a reason, but I wish someone would have told me to the importance and the fact that your GPA is forever. When you get, a D, an F, a C, and that's not to say that you can't come back from that, but really, when you do get those grades and they end up on your transcript, every time that does happen, it makes it that much more difficult to rise from that. And so anything you can do to prevent that from happening in the now is just will save you a lot of headache and heartache from speaking from my own experience. And so that's something that I wish someone would have told me, that your GPA is forever. And so what does that really look like? It really looks like prioritizing your college and undergraduate coursework over that job that you might have in the interim. And I know that's easier said than done. And because sometimes for a lot of us, especially if you're coming from a first gen household where you don't have, a mom or dad who are, paying for your education, you kind of feel that pressure of not wanting to take on that educational debt. But I would counter that by saying that really the time you're spending in school on your academics is an investment, and really treat it as that. And so if you have to take on loans and get into debt, but that means that you're going to get an A in your coursework, I would much rather see that than have you get a C or get an F in a coursework because you were trying to make ends meet. Of course, everyone's situation is unique, and I know we probably have DACA students or students who are unable to secure in financial aid, and so those situations are different. But if you are eligible to get financial aid and are able to essentially have that opportunity, because that's really what it is, I would very much advise making your academics a priority over that job that you have at In-N-Out or McDonald's, or in my case at Trader Joe's, over your extracurriculars. While I was at UCLA, for the first 2 years, I was part of the marching band, and I thoroughly enjoyed that time there. But I think that time commitment was also something that was difficult for me to juggle with the academics. And so that's something that if I could go back, I would say, like, hey, it's something that's too much of a time commitment. So it's just something to keep in mind. Going back to being a pre-med, I was a pre-med up until my junior year of college. At that time, I actually had a midlife crisis. No, I'm joking. My lung collapsed, my right lung collapsed. And so I ended up having what we call in medicine a spontaneous pneumothorax. And the CT scan of my pleural wall, which is kind of the wall that encases your lung, had these like little air blebs, and one of them popped. And so I ended up having about a 30% reduction of my lung. And so what that essentially means is that I am not able to breathe and expand and take a full breath in, and that can be dangerous. If you let it be, you can die. And so I ended up going to the emergency department at UCLA Ronald Reagan's hospital, ended up getting a chest tube, and then ended up actually having a whole thoracic surgery to repair it. And it was a long story. But in that time, I was actually I received care from a PA. And that was the first time that I encountered the PA profession. And this guy was just phenomenal, was checking in on me, like, and wrote emails making sure that I was like doing okay after the fact of like leaving the hospital. And it was just something that really, to me, that was the first time I had ever heard of the PA profession. And so that kind of started me going down the spiral of like, what is a PA? What do PAs do? And then ending up on YouTube and like watching like PA students and current PAs who were like talking about their experience and what it was like to work in the field. And so it really ended up inspiring me and kind of made me switch towards the PA profession. I was sold. And really the main factors was kind of like how Omar said, the ability to be afforded a little bit more of that time away from work to be the husband that I want to be. That's my number one priority is being a husband. Number two is in the future, if God willing, we're able to have kiddos and be the dad that I want to be. And then three is be the provider that I want to be. And so when I really sat down and looked at the numbers, looked at the time it would take and really the responsibilities and time commitment, it was kind of a no-brainer for me to commit to the PA profession. And also I have a bunch of interests. Like I feel like there's so many specialties that I enjoyed. I feel like I enjoyed every rotation during PA school. And so that's also one of the nice things about the PA profession, how Omar said, we call it lateral mobility, but that's just a word for being able to switch specialties at any point in time. So if you're working in emergency medicine for 8 years and you get burnt out, you can go and do pediatrics and then go take care of a bunch of kids for like another 10 years. And then you get tired of kids vomiting and crying, and then you can go and take care of the elderly. But they also sometimes cry and vomit. So that's something to keep in mind. These pictures here. So on the left is my grandma. She actually is one of the, I was talking to my mom about just the privilege to have her there at my white coat ceremony. And at that ceremony, she was, tearing up and crying because I'm essentially the first one to go to college, to, finish this degree and get that white coat. And it is a picture that I'm very proud of. And also one thing that I also think about is my grandmother went through a lot of health issues in the last 5 years, and where she had some severe lupus. And so this is can be a severe autoimmune disease that causes a lot of issues with your vision, skin, with your organs. And she was in the hospital for about 4 months with lupus. And then on top of that, she ended up contracting TB. And so at that time, the providers that were around her, I remember from visiting her and also from talking to my mom that she was terrified out of her life, rightly so. And there wasn't any providers who spoke Spanish. Of course, there was some nursing care of people who were able to translate. But really, what she echoed was just this worry that they wouldn't understand her, that they wouldn't know exactly what her needs were. And so now, reflecting on this side of the field and about to start my career, and just reflecting on the fact that I get to be that voice of just reassurance and be the person who answers the questions for my abuelita, or for your abuelita, or for whoever's abuelita comes in through the building. I'll be able to use my experience as a Latino, as a Mexican American son of immigrant, and really be able to use that to care for this population, which in California happens to be about 40 to 50%. Omar backed me up with these stats. And it continues to grow. I think the Hispanics it seems like they're taking over in California, but really it is I can't understate or overstate the privilege that it is to be in this position and be that, kind of like how Omar had previously said, be that sense of calm for someone like my abuela. The next picture is also another picture that I'm proud of during my cardiothoracic surgery rotation. I was closing up some tissue, and so just really being able to be involved in that kind of huge operation was an honor, and something that I just never imagined. It was really something that I'm really proud of, even though I was just throwing in some simple sutures and my hand was shaking. But just the fact that we're there, and we're being able to provide that care. It's again a huge privilege. Another thing to highlight, I got my patient care hours working as an EMT. And so I did that for about 1.5 years on the ambulance, and then worked as an emergency room technician for a year. And so I get some students who ask me like, how can I get an ER tech position? Really, the big way is to work on the ambulance, and then the hospitals that you go and take patients to, start networking and talking to the nurses, try to speak to the charge nurse and ask like, hey, or talk to the techs and be like, hey, is there a tech position that's opening up? That's how I was able to essentially get this position, is by networking in that way. Another thing that I want to highlight is that from, like I mentioned before, when I was starting to like get my feet wet with what the PA profession was, I really found a lot of useful content from PAs like the PA Life, Adana the PA, Savannah Perry, who's also a big PA on YouTube. And these were people that really I found inspirational. But one of the things that I remember being when I was in undergrad, and then also finishing up my coursework, was that I would search up like Latino PA like on YouTube, or I would search up like Mexican PA, or like something along the lines of like my demographic PA, and nothing would come up. And I just remember like feeling kind of like it was just a little disheartening to not be able to see someone like me doing this thing. And so out of those kind of feelings came this, which is the Mexican PA YouTube channel and Instagram. And I'm sure similar with Omar, he has his Instagram, El Padrino, or el.pa.trino. And we'll include those at the end of this talk. But really, this channel is dedicated to increasing the presence of our Latinos and Hispanics in medicine, and just being that big brother to students. And because as we've seen and heard, it's really hard to be what you can't see. And so really being able to just be an example for students out there is a huge, and I will understate this, I think, a huge blessing. And that's really what we're trying to do with this channel. So if you go visit that, you can always write in the comments and see what I was up to on my rotations. I have videos on there giving you advice on how to things to consider when you're applying to PA school. I have my complete PA school application on there. And so that's really one of the biggest resources that I am most proud of. And then finally on the right is my little familia. That is my wife, Jennifer, and then my dog son, Noah. And then just to kind of highlight my wife is actually a first-year clinical psych PhD student at Loma Linda in Southern California. And so she's just starting school. I just finished school, and so we're swapping roles. She's at Starbucks still studying right now for her first midterm exams. But really, the reason I mention it is because you can do this. Like these careers and things like that something that seems so far away, especially if you don't have anyone in your family who's done it before. But my word of advice is to continue to press forward, be stubborn, and really seek out things like this, like Pre-Med CC and other organizations, whether that's on campus or online. Try to find mentors, and that's easier said than done, I know. And because I remember when I was in your shoes, I really struggled to find a good mentor. But really put yourself out there. Closed mouths don't get fed. And so really knocking on those doors, being stubborn. If you tell me you're struggling to find a shadowing opportunity, I would say, how many clinics have you gone to in person? I know I had one student who I think ended up visiting probably like 16 or 17 clinics, and then eventually was able to find a shadowing opportunity. And so really just making that effort to be seen, be heard, network, it goes a long way for your future career, and to essentially, not lose heart in this long path. And then the last kind of thing that we wanted to leave you before I know we're pretty much out of time, is just some stats on why we need you in medicine. And so 8 out of 10 PA out of this was from a survey from the American Academy of PAs in 2022. but 8 out of 10 PAs identified as Caucasian or white. 6% reported they were of Hispanic, Latinx, or Spanish origin. 3% identified as Black or African American. And then the numbers are even lower for indigenous populations. And so it's just one of the things that we really want to highlight is the PA profession. Medicine, as we know, there's a physician shortage. We need you, but the PA profession, we need more providers, diverse providers, because the populations that we serve are diverse. And so with that, with the unique I guess experiences, the unique lived experiences that each one of you who is listening to this have, that is something unique that you are bringing to the table. And we need that in medicine, because there's going to be a tia, a tío, an aunt, an uncle, an abuelita, a grandma, or, insert your, family member here who needs someone like you at their bedside. And so really that's one of the things that we just want to highlight, and hopefully is a source of inspiration to you that you can do this, and we need you in medicine. Omar, anything else you'd add to this?
That was beautiful, man. I want to be a PA now, thanks to you. Let's do it. No, that was wonderfully said, honestly. Yeah. Let's so I think we might have some time for questions. Jubin said we could do rapid fire. So let's do it. How are we gonna do this?
All right, I'll read them out to you guys.
Can you guys take down the unshare your screen?
Oh yeah,
we can see your pretty faces.
Let's see. Stop sharing. There we go. Are we good?
Yes. All right, I will read out the first question for you guys. Do you think that there is a burnout issue among PAs as much as it is among physicians?
I don't know the exact data for that, but subjectively, the answer is there's a less burnout rate, and I think it's just because of how highly satisfied or more satisfied PAs are in the job market. What do you think? What do you think, Mario?
It does. I did look at a Medscape report recently that I got in one of my emails, and it depends on the specialty. And so if you look at, for instance, emergency medicine providers, some of those burnout rates were comparable to our physicians, our physician partners. But again, it really just depends on a bunch of factors, really. Burnout is not just one single thing, oh, it's because I'm seeing, 30, 40 patients in one day, but it really is a cumulative effect from all of the factors. So the amount of patients that you're seeing, the amount of time, the resources. Do you have a medical assistant or a scribe, the documentation responsibilities, or the work hours that you're doing? Are they having you do call? Are they having you, do you not have access to the proper supervising physician? All of those things together, make up the picture of contributing to burnout. And I would say that it does exist, and I would tell students that it's something that exists across the board, whether you're a physician, whether you're a PA, whether you're an NP, a nurse. And so it's something that we all have to watch out for and be proactive about having healthy habits, whether that's working out or just taking care of yourself to avoid that. So I would say PAs are at risk for burnout. But like Omar said, we do have a little bit more of that lifestyle flexibility in terms of hours and some of those kind of requirements in terms of the administration side of things.
Yeah, we'll look into that. Next question. Oh, is she frozen?
Please. I think we did. I can pull some. Let's see.
PA is infamously described as drinking from a fire hydrant. Looking back at your didactic years, what would you have done differently during your pre-PA years that would have prepared you for PA school, and any specific classes you wish you took that would have made your life easier?
I can kind of answer this one. I would say the big thing is to really, especially if you're an undergrad, really dive into the science behind learning. And so what that looks like is essentially looking at literature, and you can search up, there's a bunch of YouTube content on this about using science-based methods to learn. And so that was really what changed between me being a C and B student to being an A student, and being during didactic year of PA school, being a straight A student, is that I started to incorporate science-backed methods of learning. And so what that looks like is doing things like spaced repetition, active recall, interleaving effect. Really, there's a whole host of things out there that you can read. And one of the books that I would recommend you guys look into is called Make It Stick. Make It Stick. It's by two neuroscientists who kind of looked at all of the research that was available and wrote this book to kind of debunk myths and also highlight research-based strategies to improving things like your test scores and your like academic success. Yeah, thanks, Juven.
The thing is that, so this is a question, and I think you guys talked about it, but if you could just give, this person's on the fence between MD and PA, and what's the major difference, and what about difference between PAs and MDs prescribing and testing patients? The thing is that I would just say is that this is like the rest of your life, and they could tell you their answers, but do research. There's a lot of information out there on YouTube. What's the difference between a PA, and it's also very different from state to state. And so look at where you want to live, but also that's a research that you have to do for yourself, more than anything, because it's a level of care. So for example, physicians can do XYZ and PAs can. One example is in the emergency department, PAs do a lot. They see the patient, they do primary, secondaries, but like if you need to like crack a chest, it's a physician that's going to do it. So it just depends on where you want to go. And for some folks, like they want to do that part of it, or in cardiac surgery, when the physician is the cardiac surgeon is opening, actually PAs can open chest, but they're doing like the stuff where the PA is like graphing the legs, the stuff in his veins. And so and it's everywhere is different. Some physicians may be comfortable for you doing certain things, and some physicians may not. So I think this is such a huge, and that's why the whole part of being in a healthcare field is knowing how it's delivered, and that's part of the research that you have to do. Because I mean, PA or MD, that's like the rest of your life, and this is not something that you can say, all right, I've gone to PA school, and now I want to go to medical school, and or maybe I've gone to medical school, I wish I would have gone to PA school. That's kind of like, so, but I would let you guys go
Which
over that.
I would just mention, like, it does happen. There are PAs out there who go through this whole process and then end up saying, like, you know what, I want to go back to medical school, or the other way around. I've heard and seen of students who are in medical school left medical school to pursue PA. But really, one of the ways that I've heard it explained in that comparison in terms of like the didactic bookwork and knowledge that we acquire and comparing the MDDO versus the PA, really both are drinking from a fire hydrant at full force. But the PA, if you can imagine a big avenue, a street, and that is all kind of like the information flow that we have to receive. And then on that street, you have a bunch of like drives, little streets that are smaller. As a PA, you kind of just barrel through the main avenue, getting the most important parts of pathophysiology. Versus our MD partners, they're able to kind of dive into each and every one of those drives and little streets, and take the time to really dive into kind of the deeper biochemistry and pathophys behind a lot of these pathologies. Yeah. And we're learning a lot of the similar information, and from talking to some of my buddies who are at the med school at UC Davis, it does feel, and from sounding to it, that the PA program was a much faster pace, and there was testing that was a lot kind of more intense in terms of it being back to back on same days, or like one day you would have a pharmacology test and then the next day a physiology exam. And so in terms of the pacing, I do think PAs are a little bit faster. But in terms of depth and breadth of knowledge, your MD-DO is going much deeper into the weeds of conditions.
Yeah. And to add, I mean, kind of like what Juba was saying, PAs have a lot of autonomy, and it varies for sure from department to department. But if you want to be the one 100% calling the shots, even if you're not with the patient, like everyone has to report to you and you make every single decision, then MDDO is for you. Another thing is, I mean, the time, right? So we're both drinking out of a fire hose, but PAs, are able to start working, quicker essentially and practice quicker, and time, I think, is something that everyone values differently, or just or as well as like the scope of practice of one can get in a certain time. I think there's value in that. So if you don't mind going through residency and you want to be, like I mentioned, the person calling the shots and know everything specifically in that arena, then I would say MDDO's the route for you. That's just one of many. It's a difficult. It's a large question to dissect.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
if you comes down to just think about it, like sit on it for a while and really just think about it.
Yeah, and if you want to be a provider, like if you want to go in the emergency room, as a PA, you could basically, after you get your college degree, it's 3 years PA, and you're pretty much right in. Now I've seen like there's PA residency programs, which is like a year. But if you want to be a physician in the ER, it's 4 years of medical school plus 4 years of residency. So it's 8 years, and for some people, you may not want to do it that long, and you might say, hey, you know what? And again, it's a choice that you need to make, and individuals make choices for their own life. And this is not something that, for Mario and Omar, that's what they chose to do. So they can't make that decision for you. This is that I would just say. How heavily does the school you choose do matter? For example, do employers care more if you went to Laverne program or the USC program?
This is a big, I guess, simple but big topic. Supposedly it's a yes, but honestly, I think it's a no. I think the important thing is to know what your values are and go to a school that you think you'll get the most out of, along with, like not giving up too many things, like the distance away from your family or your loved ones or the debt. Like everything plays a role. At the end of the day, you are going to become a PA. And at the end of the day, there is a great need for PAs, and it's not scarce, right? You become a PA, and then it doesn't end there, right? Like for me, like I went to a Cal State school, and now I go to a private school. Like it never stops, right? So if you if you just want to be a PA and it works out perfectly for you at a local PA school versus a private or UC, then that's perfectly fine. Like you can still climb up the ladder, and even then, like I think it's just you should really focus on what PA school is best fit for you. Mario, take it away.
And to add to that, I would say that really, at the end of the day, becoming a provider, when you're walking to that room to see that patient, the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth is not going to be, what PA program did you go to? Did you go to the Duke PA program, the first PA program in the nation? Or did you go to Point Loma University, a new program in San Diego? That is not a conversation I don't think any PA has ever had, or a question that what your patient cares about is if you are being present, if you are listening to them and giving them the time and space that they deserve. And that's really what patients are looking for, and that's really what clinics are looking for, is someone who is a team player, and who is willing to just essentially be part of the team and make both the people that you're working with and make it a joy to work, that it's a joy for them to work with you, and also for you to be that empathetic and caring provider that patients want. And so that's the bigger priority. And I think that is something that can be developed at any PA program, because that ultimately it comes down to, if you're accepted to a PA program, you have the skills. You've been, you've done the work to get in, and so you have the skills to be able to care for someone, and be that provider that you want to be. That's regardless of the program that you go to.
And I think for sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that one thing that I guarantee matters more is that you have the similar lived experiences as your patients, right? It's something that you're not going to get at Stanford, at UC Davis. Like, your lived experiences are your lived experiences. And if the patient population that you're treating has similar or come from similar backgrounds, that's going to matter more than going to a certain school with certain stature or yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is it doesn't matter where you go to PA school, you all have to take the same PENS exam and you need to graduate. And for employers, what that matters to them is, what do your preceptors say about you? What do the people that have worked with you say about you, your character, the type of patients? Because you go to X and Y PA school, but if you're a jerk, they're not going to want to work with you.
Yeah.
So that's more than anything else. So employers, if you go to the top PA school or the bottom one, at the end of the day, they're going to call you a PA. So it's going to be the same thing. It's about those experiences that Omar talked about. For example, if you want to get a job working in East LA, or you probably should be familiar with those populations. You should probably also be able to speak Spanish. I mean, those are like good qualities to have. But if you want to go be a plastic surgery PA in Beverly Hills, you probably need to have other sets of skills, like maybe you need to be aesthetically, I mean, I don't know what those are, but I think it's just those are the most important things of getting a job. And don't ever look at what school is. I mean, and I think Omar just said, like, he went to Northridge and he ended up at Stanford. Mario went to UCLA, and so and so it doesn't really matter where you go. It's where you do with that and where you end up. So, what is your intake on schools that are on probation or provisional, and is it worth to apply? You guys want to touch on that?
I can touch on this. I think ultimately, if you have to rank it, let's say you get your student who gets into a program that is on probation versus a program that's fully accredited, I would 100% say go to the accredited program. And typically, when PA programs who were previously fully accredited and end up on probation, and what that means is that there's been something logistical or something that they've done, that the PA program has done in the eyes of the ARC PA, which is that organization, the Accreditation Review Commission for PA programs, that in their eyes they deem not what's the word? Not worth having the full accreditation. And so when you see the probation or status probationary, that program is still accredited, but they are like, the RP is having a close microscope on them and making sure that they fulfill all of the requirements. And so if you are a student who only gets into a program that is on probation, I would say you should probably commit to that school, because again, every year it gets more harder. We have more applicants. And as long as you start a PA program, whether it's kind of, I know it's a little confusing, but whether it's fully accredited or status probationary accreditation, if you start that program, you are essentially guaranteed to finish it. And so if one example is Western University in Southern California, they recently were placed on probation and were actually barred by the ARCPA from admitting a class for this year of 2023, this fall. And so what does that mean for the current students that are in that program? They are able to still finish, do their rotations, graduate, and sit for the PATs. Nothing changes for them. But for the program itself, they have to essentially make sure that they are meeting all of the requirements, whether that's logistic stuff, administrative stuff, or faculty numbers. There's so many factors that go into having the accreditation status. And so, I guess that would be the short/long answer is, if you get into a fully accredited program, go to that. If you get only into a probationary program, go to it, because that's the only program you've gotten into. But bear in mind that there's always a risk of with programs that are on probation, them essentially not being able to accept you after offering you an admission, which is unfortunately what happened to in the class that was supposed to be the incoming class of 2023 for Western University, is that they were essentially, they interviewed for Western, were accepted, and then this past spring they were notified that the school was barred from accepting students. And so it's a real risk to keep in mind. But you know, something to just be aware of, that it can happen. And so yeah. And then also one of the stats to look at when you're looking at a PA program is their first time pass rate. And then also you can go to the ARCPA website, ARCPA website, and actually see the accreditation history over the last, you know, decades, however long the PA program, and see what their status has been, you know, in the past. Are they a program that has like many times gone into probation, or are they a program that has consistently been accredited? And so that can kind of give you, I guess, some insight into just feeling more secure about the schools that you're choosing to apply to and accept a seat at.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would just say about accreditation is that if they're part of larger institutions, like UC San Diego as a PA program, CSU Monterey has one too. If they're part of larger institutions, they have a little bit more credibility, but also funding to get their things together. So that's always the case too. But if they're like the little schools or little off, you know, to me it's just my this is my own personal philosophy. To me they're part of larger healthcare systems that have a lot more support. And I think a lot of times when places get like put on probation and stuff is they don't have enough clinical sites for their students. But you know, like
yeah, there's so many factors.
Yeah, one of the factors is that, and so yeah, but there's many factors.
Yeah, so, and when the school is placed on probation as well, you can like search up online why they were placed on probation.
Yeah,
and so that's also something to keep in mind.
Nishida, you want to take it over?
Yeah. All right. Our next question we have is, did you ever face feelings of inadequacy due to lack of information or connections, or just simply due to your upbringing? If so, how did you overcome this?
Oh my Lord, that's a 100% yes on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's something to be okay with. I guess I'll speak on it. It's something that you should get comfortable with, not knowing everything. And there you go, imposter syndrome. I think that's something we all like fight, especially coming from underserved or minority, underrepresented group, right? I think we can all attest to that. And I could dive into imposter syndrome, but I think the easiest way to overcome something like that is honestly just find closure in yourself in different aspects. So for me, if I ever feel dumb, I mean, I look it up, do some research, Google it really quick. On my way to the bathroom as I'm crying about it, like, you know, sometimes, you know, also just reminding myself that I'm here to learn, and reminding myself like what it took to get here, and that it's okay to not know everything. And you know, you have to kind of accept that you are never going to know everything. I think all that matters is that you do your absolute best, and you don't sacrifice too many things that make you lose yourself in the process. There's a lot to dissect there, but yes, 100% yes. Mario, though, I'm not sure. This guy's a beast.
No. It's something kind of just how Omar said. Like, you experience it at every leg of the journey, and I think everyone has, and it's a healthy thing to have, a healthy level of imposter syndrome. You just, I think, as you progress through your career, you just get better at hiding it, but it
become numb to it.
Yeah, you become numb to it. No, but it's something that for sure, like even coming into a program like UC Davis, I remember showing up there my first, you know, class, and just like having this fear that like I was gonna like fail out, and that of course isn't what happened. I ended up, you know, completing my program and graduating, but it was something that was were very real thoughts and emotions that I experienced, that Omar probably experienced, that students across the board experience, even if they don't verbalize it. And it's something that you just you learn to essentially cope with by different things, like, you know, talking to family members, you know, me talking to my wife and venting to my wife. And then also on the other aspect, I let some of those feelings of inadequacy really drive me to try to be the best student that I could be, both in my clinical and didactics. And so being able to focus on, like I previously mentioned, the like research-backed methods of studying, being able to take that, implement it, and then see the fruit of applying those study methods in terms of like my grades, of being able to get A's during didactic of my PA program. It was such a, I mean, I'm not going to show it. It's a confidence boost, and it's something that just feels good. It feels good to be able to know that you're learning this content, and you're able to succeed academically. Of course, not every student is like that. For some students, they don't have the luxury. At least in my case, like my wife was cooking meals. My wife was washing clothes. I don't think I did. I mean, I did some laundry, but 99% of the laundry my wife was taking care of, and that was something that afforded me the privilege to be able to study, a bit more than someone who was a mom or a dad or had other responsibilities. And that's not to discount that, those, if you're getting a B in a PA program or a C, is that you're any less of a student or provider. But really, at least for me, the imposter syndrome was something that I used to drive me and to be the best student and provider that I can be. And now we're essentially at the end of, I finished my PA program, took my exam, and now we have switched roles. My wife is in school. Today I was like meal prepping and cooking. I did laundry this morning. And so it's very much the roles are reversed. And yeah, it's, again, something that will be unique to you, and it's okay to experience it, but also let use that to like drive you in a positive way.
All right. 1 second. Okay. So I've worked in ER as registration for 2 years and barely started my direct patient care hours. Would you think they'll reconsider the aspect, or would you think to wait to apply? Do you want me to repeat the question?
I'm seeing it right now. I'm trying to understand it. I'm barely started.
So I guess the question I would have for this, for Maida, would be, if I've worked in the ER as a registration for 2 years and barely started my direct patient care hours. So it sounds like you're now in a role where you're providing direct patient care. And so when you apply through CASPA, you will designate, there's essentially, if you go on the CASPA FAQ page, they have terms and definitions, the way they define patient care experience versus healthcare experience, or non-direct healthcare experience. And so that's one thing that you will highlight in your application. And so being a registration person for an ER would be a healthcare experience that's non-direct patient care. And you can put those hours in there, and then whatever role you're currently working as currently, where you're actually providing care, you would put that under your direct patient care experience. And so to just provide some examples, things that are healthcare experiences but not direct patient care are things like, at least in my case, I did some like paid research where I was like working on medical charts, didn't work directly with the patient, but it was still a healthcare position. I was able to put those on my application. If you are a patient transporter, you have a healthcare experience, but you're not providing direct patient care or making medical decisions for a patient. And being someone who's like delivering food, for a patient in a hospital, you are interacting with patients, you see them, but you're, again, not in a responsibility role where you're, the one making some sort of medical management for them. And so that's just what I would answer to Maida.
Is there a benefit of going to a PA program that is longer in duration?
Omar, tell us.
So seriously, my program's 30 months long, so about 2.5 years. I believe Mario's is 27 or so, right? Which is typically the average.
Well, one thing before you dive into yours is, for instance, we were straight through. We didn't have any summers off, which you guys get some summers off.
Yeah. So it depends. I consulted multiple people about this in the past when I was applying or got accepted to schools. If you want to work right away, like you need to make money right now, go through it. You don't care. Let's, put your head down. Let's do it. Mario, do it. If you don't mind, like if you don't mind, right? For personally me, I didn't specifically choose Stanford just because it's a little longer, but I will say the benefits of that is that you get a summer off. I feel like I was able to, recharge, refresh. I went on vacation, went to Europe. I did a lot of things that I never thought I would ever do, essentially. And but the thing is, it takes longer, right? So you're in a PA program paying for more money. Also, you're paying for living expenses, as a student. So there's a con and pro to everything. Um, I didn't mind so much going to school that was a little bit longer because I didn't mind taking my time with things. It wasn't something that like was a make or break deal for me, but I have enjoyed the fact that my program has been a little bit longer than I would say most. And I think overall, generally, you do distribute some of that stress out a little bit. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, and that for a lot of people, that break can be very valuable because, like, after I want to say like let's say 3/4 into didactic, like you're 75% done with the book work, you start to feel the, I mean, I wouldn't call it full on burnout, but you're just like, dang, like we are in the thick of it. And then as soon as you're done with that, like now it's going to clinicals and let's just completely change the environment that you were in. And then that can be a difficult transition for a lot of students. But it's not to say that like if you're here, you're probably someone who's resilient, who's a go-getter, and so you can thrive in both. But if you really feel like you would need that kind of break, it can be something to consider. Yeah.
Also, you will adjust. Like
that's true.
You are going to be forced, even if you don't want to adjust, you will adjust. Like it's going to happen, and you'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have an attendee that graduated in 2013 and they have to retake their prereqs. So they wanted to ask any advice to make the process faster and not take forever to redo the courses.
So I think I would need a lot more context to be able to like fully like answer that one. But it depends. Like if they're working full time and like they don't have to work full time, they can take a little bit of a pay cut in order to, take more classes. I would say that if they are making up, several classes, the only thing I can think of is probably start from the bottom again. Don't if you need Chem 101 and OChem, I wouldn't say start with OChem, right? I would say work your way up. And if it's been a while, probably start a little slow, start on the slower end. And if you feel like you can handle a little bit more stress, then I would say start to stack it up. If there's some form of rush, if not, take your time with it. Because like what Mario said, grades are permanent. Grades aren't everything. I think that's the beauty of PA school. Grades are not everything, but grades are permanent, right? So
grades are going to be everything when they're bad. So if your grades are bad, then it's going to be everything. But if your grades are good, and I'm not talking, good is not 4.0, bad is, bad is like a 2.0. I mean, that's be realistic. But, and so I think like speeding through those classes, I mean, this is the second time you're taking them, so it might be a little bit easier, but, like don't shoot yourself in the, you're not going to get a cookie for finishing up fast. But if you get really bad grades, then you got to do post-bac and you got to do a bunch of other stuff. And this is your second time around. So hopefully you're doing better. So I would say, what is it? Slow and
steady wins the race.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race. So, it's a marathon. And so you don't want to like burst out. Because if you get lower grades than you did the first time you've taken them, then they'd be like, this person probably wasn't serious, or it's going to be an issue.
That would be the proverbial nail in the coffin, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of like one of those things that, as much as you want to finish fast, take that into consideration that you don't want to do worse than you did the first time around. And hopefully, first time around you had all A's, and and you're going to do fine this time. But by taking too many classes and working and doing everything else, it's going to be, so yeah, that's the only thing I have to say to that.
And if you ever if you end up watching, like going to the YouTube channel, watching my video, you'll see my academics, like freshman, sophomore year, I had multiple C's and F's, and those are not the end of the world. Like you can come back from that. But speaking from personal experience, it is much harder to go and walk up that hill, and versus you being able to prevent it from dropping in the first place.
All right, our next question we have is, how do you tackle the personal statement portion of the CASPA?
So we definitely will cover a lot of these, and just in case, like we're trying to speed through, I think, with the question just for the sake of time. So
yeah,
you might get a better answer.
And so for everyone that's still here, just so you know, this is the first of a 5-part series. And so we will be meeting every 2 weeks on Sundays around this time. And hopefully this is a good time for everyone. It looks like we had over 50 or close to 60 attendees at some point. And so it looks like it was a good time. But yeah, we're going to be diving into, I don't know, Jubin, if you can kind of pull up the schedule. So people can see. We're going to be talking about, I think the next one is going to be about like the actual application. We're going to be talking about what our experiences were like in PA school and how we succeeded during didactic, during clinicals. And we'll definitely be just kind of diving into those individual elements of the pre-PA and PA student experience to make sure that you guys, again, this is a 5-part series workshop to essentially just give you all of the information that we can to prepare you both as a pre-PA to apply and get in hopefully on your first try, and if you do get in, to be a successful PA student. And so Jubin shared the file for all attendees. You can open that up there. Yeah, and then of course with every meeting I think we'll have Q&As, right, for those specific topics. And so
yeah, and we'll do our best to have more Q&A, more
yes.
time for the Q&A section. With that being said, Jubin, we can answer the question. I think around what time do you want to call it a night?
I think Nishita has to go, and I could keep this open for maybe another 15 minutes, but I have 2 exams tomorrow, so so I would say 15 minutes, and we'll try to get as much of an answer we can next 15 minutes, but I do have to go. And then, and I think, we'll have there's 4 more sessions. And I think the last one is going to be just mostly Q&A. So, but, we would love to answer all of them. So I would say, come back, and we'll try to get all of them answered, and realistically.
Yeah. I also have to go soon. So I don't mind answering this question. Like give a little brief question, then I do have to take off soon, unfortunately. But just to clarify the question, Mario, you want to add something?
I was going to say also for all the students that are still currently here, if we are during this series unable to you just don't end up answering your individual question, hit me up on Instagram, hit up Omar, slide into our DMs. I try to the point. It usually takes me at least, I feel like my turnaround for my DMs is like about 2 weeks. But I will get back to you and I will answer an individual question that you may have, or comment on the YouTube channel. That way other students can see the question you have I answered. And so really use those resources. Again, Omar on Instagram and on TikTok is El Padrino, which is L.pa.drino. And then I'm just the Mexican PA on Instagram, on TikTok.
You nail it every time. You just say it perfectly every time.
I practice it too much.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll briefly, just to clarify, is it when to start working on the personal statement? Was that the question, Nishita?
It was just how to tackle the personal statement. They were asking like through anecdotes, themes, or personal experiences.
How to tackle it? The way I guess the easiest way for me to explain it was I was kind of advised to just choose like 2 or 3 themes in your life that are constant no matter what. And may sound easy, but it might be difficult if you haven't like thought about it before. For me personally, it was my family, baseball, and then I distributed just with like my entire academic career. And then and just like those themes that you I literally say out loud or verbalize or put on paper in your personal statement, you want them to echo throughout your entire application and on to your interviews. In all honesty, I think that would specifically make you your unique self, which is what they're looking for. And just try to stick to like who you are, and what makes you. And it's difficult, but do your best. I mean, it was difficult for me. Do your best to tell a story, and and just try to keep it to yourself. Like keep it like true to yourself, to not make it very generic. I mean, obviously, there's things we know they want them to hear, but keep in mind these people like review thousands of thousands of applications and probably have been doing it for decades, right? So make it true to yourself. Probably start working on it. If applications open up in April, maybe start trying to work on it, in January if you can. Or like if you're still not going to apply this year, like what I would do is anything that ever pops up that you think is like has some value or merit to your life, I would just like make a note. Open up your notes on your iPhone or your Android and just like write down a little experience on the date, and maybe just briefly write why it's impactful or why it impacted you the way it did today. And you'll just kind of keep track of all of that, and eventually you'll have things that you'll remember that you want to add to your application. Yeah.
All right. Our next question is, do you have to be a certified medical assistant? My job hired me without a certification.
I don't know that one.
No. So really what PA programs care about is what you're actually doing. Are you, taking vital signs? Are you really engaging with the patient? Are you administering vaccinations? Like those are all things that a practice can train a medical assistant who isn't formally certified to do. If you're doing those kinds of things, you're going to describe them in your description box for that specific experience in CASPA, the centralized application for PAs. And so the short answer is no, you don't have to be certified, but becoming certified and getting that certification makes it much easier to find a position as a MA. And typically bigger hospital systems like UC Davis, Stanford, UCLA, insert big hospital system name here, they're going to be hiring certified people just because of the liability and typically positions where medical assistants are just being trained without a certification are more of your smaller private practices where a physician is like training or has trained other medical assistants to do the job. And so again, the biggest thing is like what you're actually doing. Are you providing direct patient care, or are you just simply checking in the patient and not really having a say in terms of like the maybe like for instance having a patient with where you have two patients and you get to make the decision of which one's the bigger priority, which one needs to be seen first. That is something that is huge. And versus someone who's just like in the office checking people in, you're not really making that kind of decision.
Yeah, and the other thing is if you're working in a small clinic, you could become a CNA or a medical assistant if you have a doctor sign off and you need to have so many hours, and you just have to go take the test so you can study it on your own. But you need to, and you have to just look at those. But you could get those certifications, and I think it's cost a couple, like less than it's like $105, and you just need to have an MD to sign off on it. So get that certification if you have the experience. You could do it. I think it's one of like CNA or MA are the only ones you could do that. You can't do it for EMT or anything else. So just look at that.
Should we start adding everything on our CASPA now, or do we have to wait until we are ready to apply?
So you can actually open up CASPA and start adding some like experiences, and then they will I think you can roll it over. The one thing that doesn't roll over is your letters of recommendation. Right, Omar? I think if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you can it'll just be saved on there, but if you never submit it, that's fine. From what I remember. Yeah.
Right. How many schools can you apply through CASPA? Is there a limit, or is it based on how much you can spend per application?
You can apply to 303.
303. Jesus. I think last time I checked, the average number of schools is 8 to 12. It's definitely a lot less in medical schools. I personally applied to 15 just because I was pretty insecure. I'm not going to lie. Still on the higher end, but I would say, what was the question again? Mario, take it away.
It was how many can we apply to? There's no limit, and
No limit. Yeah.
depending how many you can afford. Yeah, it does. And so really, if but typically on average, it's around like 8 to 12. I think more than 12 at that point. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you're if I was in your shoes, I would really advise looking at like the area that you want to work out of practice, because on your clinical rotations, and those rotations aren't just training opportunities, but they a lot of times turn into job opportunities where I have multiple preceptors offer me jobs. But my program is in Sacramento. And so I was unable to take any of those positions because I was at a school in an area where I was not planning on living after graduating. And so it goes to show that like the importance of really applying to programs in areas that you want to live. And one of my mentees was actually applied very wide and was accepted into a program. He lives in Southern California, was applied to a program in New York. And then after being accepted, went and visited, the school and realized this isn't for me. I'm not willing to commit to coming out here. And so really, again, do your research and really factor that in, like where you want to live and work after PA school.
All right. When would you apply to the scholarship, before you apply or after you've been accepted?
This one can be tricky because it really has to do when the applications I think close around May, I believe, right? May or April. No matter what, you won't be told if you got accepted until like September or so. So for example, for me, I started in August and I didn't find out I got the scholarship until September. So it really varies. Did you start in July, Mario?
Yeah, so for me, I found out that I was accepted to UC Davis December of 2021. What year was it?
2021? 2020.
Okay, so the timeline is this. I was accepted to UC Davis December 2021. After having the acceptance in hand, which is a requirement to apply to the National Health Service Corps, I applied to that around like March, at the end of March of 2022, and started my PA program summer of 2022, and then ended up like taking the loans and didn't know anything about the scholarship. Found out I was awarded the scholarship in September of that fall of 2022. And then the way the scholarship works is that once you receive it, they go in and essentially work with your financial aid office and essentially pay back the loans that you took out for the beginning of the PA program. And then moving forward, they just pay your tuition as you go through it. But yeah, that the National Health Service Corps application opens up sometime in the spring, around like March.
When should you start applying for the HRSA? Should it have been while you are applying to programs or after you've been accepted to a program?
After you've been accepted.
Yeah, NHC wants you to be in a program so they could give the money directly to the school. I think that's how it works for some of them. But yeah, you need to be into a program, and you need to be in a program before they can give you the money.
Correct. You would apply before you start the program, but you would have to quote unquote have an acceptance in hand to be able to apply, because that's part of the application.
Mario, how many schools did you apply to?
Oof, like I want to say like 8 or 9 or less. You think less?
Yeah. And Omar was 15. All right, so they got that kind of question answered.
I was on the higher end for sure. It's pretty tiring. I'm not gonna lie. Don't apply to 15 if you don't have
expensive.
to. Not expensive. Yeah.
How long is the commitment to NHSC post graduation from PA school?
Minimum 2 years, regardless of how much money you take from the program. And so the minimum is 2 years.
If you go to a PA program that's 3 years, and they end up paying for 3 years, then you would do 3 years of service.
Yeah.
But the minimum is 2, regardless of how much you accept.
Yeah. For me, it's 3 years, and it's kind of weird because my program is 2.5 years, but my quarters don't start on when their quarters starts. It's like a weird transition, and I ended up being on the higher end of 2.5 years for like pay periods. So for me, it's 3 years. Yeah.
How did you prepare yourself to be successful in PA school after struggling in your undergrad?
This question we will talk about in the following series, and we're going to dive deep into it to give you guys just kind of the scoop on that.
Let's yeah. So we'll definitely dive into all these questions. I know there's a whole bunch, but if you can, let's save them for the next one.
Yeah, you guys save some of your questions because, like I said, everybody has to go, and they're going to do it again on the 22nd. We put the flyer. You go on the website. This video, some of the questions are being repeated. So this video is going to be posted sometime by tomorrow or Tuesday by the time it renders on our website and also on YouTube. And thank you again, both Omar and Mario, for coming, and we will see them again. And like I said, we would love to answer all of them, but it's just, we can't. It's been almost an hour after, and we all have like exams and things to do, so we want to apologize for that.
Yeah, Juven is preparing to apply to PA school, right, Juven?
Huh? What's that?
You're preparing to apply to PA school?
Me? No, I'm doing medical school.
Right.